One of the things that I always wrestle with is really like this ultra competitive comparison kind of thing in my head that I'm not doing enough.
Marie Forleo is a powerhouse entrepreneur, the creator of Marie TV, a best-selling author, and a world-class coach. But in this conversation, Marie isn't in mentoring mode. She's opening up in a big way, alongside her best friend, Kris Carr.
She is my first, my last, my only phone call when everything is going right, or most frequently when everything is going wrong.
And they don't hold back, from the heartbreak to the healing.
She opened the door for me to be able to ask for the kind of support I needed in a really traumatic moment.
The shit was hitting the fan in my life, and I had more perspective when it really hit the fan in her life.
And after digging deep, they bring the laughter and real talk only your ride or die would dare to share.
The only person in the world who can say painful truth and to not have me want to slap her.
Is the only time you can change somebody is when they're in diapers.
Now that'll preach. That'll preach that.
Join hosts Martin Luther King III, Andrea Waters King, Mark Kielberger, and Craig Kielberger for an honest, unapologetic conversation about relationships, finding light in the darkest moments, and the biggest lessons learned along the way.
I stood there and I was like, whoa.
Before today's episode begins, please be advised. This conversation includes discussions about suicide and mental health. Some of the content may be distressing. If you or someone you know is struggling, help is available. Call the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988 or text HOME to 741-741 to reach the crisis text line. These services are free and available 24/7.
Welcome to My Legacy. Today's guest is Marie Forleo. Marie built her business and platform on purpose, resilience, and unshakable belief, and she's made a career of helping others unlock the same. Marie, we're so honored to have you with us here today. And on My Legacy, we always ask our guests to bring a +1, someone who they admire, they turn to in times of challenge and grief and hope, someone who's their ride or die. Marie, can you introduce who your +1 is today?
I brought the one and only magical unicorn herself, Miss Kris Carr. And for those of you who do not know, my best friend in the entire world, she is a powerhouse herself. She is a multiple New York Times #1 best-selling author. She is someone who has spent over 2 decades of her life not just surviving, but thriving with cancer and has inspired millions to do the same. She's got books, she's got podcasts, through her coaching, through everything she shares with the world. The New York Times has called her a new role model, and Oprah has named her a force for good and for good reason. And personally, Kris is literally, she's my soul sister. We talk about this all the time. We do not understand how we are not legitimate family, but we are meant family. And she is the person, we were talking about this the other day, we have never let each other down. And we started celebrating our friend anniversary. I think it's been over 15 years. And she is my first, my last, my only phone call when everything is going right, or most frequently when everything is going wrong, because that happens to all of us in life.
What a spectacular introduction.
Kris, when did you know that Marie was going to be your soul sister, your friend, your lifelong ride or die companion?
From the first moment I spoke to her. So we met each other because back in the day when you're doing everything and you're building your life and you're building your business and you're wearing all the hats as young puppy entrepreneurs, we were also our customer service. And so I bought one of her products because so many people had said to me, you should know about Marie. You guys would really love each other. And so I was like, who is this Marie? And so I went and I bought her Live in the Moment Booty Camp. And I was like, I don't know what any of that is, but it sounds like I need to know what it is and have a little bit of that in my life. And we got on the phone and we have not stopped talking ever since.
That is so, so special. Let me, Marie, ask a question. You grew up in a small town in New Jersey and have said your mom was a big factor in shaping your grit. What do you carry forward from those early years?
Well, so much. But I think the quick story that I will tell that has really shaped my life is the fact that my mom, like so many of our parents, didn't grow up with a lot of resources. She actually had two alcoholic parents and grew up in Newark, New Jersey. And she learned really by necessity how to stretch a dollar bill around a block like 5 or 6 times. And she had made a promise to herself when she was young that she would somehow find a way to a better life. And so one of my best memories as a kid was sitting around our kitchen table in New Jersey, and it was Sundays, and cutting out coupons because my mom loved to teach me all the ways that our family could save money. And so I think most of the people here were all of a certain age where you might remember something that were called proofs of purchase, where if you purchased a bunch of boxes of cereal from
Oh,
a
yes.
particular brand or milk cartons and you collected all those little squares and you mailed them in, you could get cool stuff like cooking utensils or a recipe book or something. And my mom's favorite thing that she loved more than anything was this tiny little AM/FM radio that she got for free from Tropicana orange juice. So it looked like an orange. It had a red and white straw sticking out of the top. That was the antenna. And as a kid, I knew I could always find my mom somewhere from listening to the tinny little sound of this radio. So one day, coming home from school, walking home, and I hear like Diana Ross blasting, really small out of this radio. And as I approach the house, it's coming from a weird orientation. And I look up and I see my tiny little mom perched precariously on the roof of our 2-story house. No ladder, no nothing. I'm terrified. I'm like, Mom, what are you doing up there? Are you okay? And she yells down and she's like, Ree, don't worry about it. The roofer, there's a leak. The roofer said it was going to be at least $500 to fix it. I said, screw that. I'm doing it myself. So that gives you a little flavor of Mama Forleo.
Sounds amazing.
So for context, this was the 1980s, right? This is all pre-internet. This is pre-Google. This is pre-YouTube. And my mom only had a high school education. So one day, it was in the fall. I'm coming home from school. And it was dark out. It's Jersey, right? It's like 4 o'clock and it's spooky already. And as I'm approaching the house, everything is dark and it's quiet. Now, I'm Italian American. And if your house is dark and quiet, this is not good news. So I'm terrified. I'm like, what's going on? Where's my mom? Got that pit in my stomach like something is seriously wrong. So I walk in the house, silence. And then I start hearing these little clicks and clacks from the kitchen. I tiptoe over and I see my mom in the kitchen. She's hunched over the table and it looks like an operating room. There's a spotlight on, screwdrivers, electrical tape, and then in about 20 pieces was a completely dismantled Tropicana orange radio. And I stood back and I was like, Mom, are you okay? What happened? That's your favorite thing. Is it broken? And she looks up at me and she says, Ree, she goes, I'm fine. She's like, the antenna was a little busted. The dial wasn't working. So I'm fixing it. And I stood there and I watched her work her magic. And then I finally thought to ask the question I should have always asked, which was this. Hey, Mom, how do you know how to do so many different things that you've never done before, but nobody's shown you how to do it? And she puts down her screwdriver and she cocks her head to the side. And she said, Ree, what are you talking about? Nothing in life is that complicated. If you roll up your sleeves, you get in there and you do it. Everything is figure-outable. And I kid you guys not, I stood there and I was like, whoa, everything is figure-outable. I was like, oh my goodness, everything is figure-outable. And so it was just this belief in possibility and grittiness and going for it, even though you have no clue what the heck you're doing. That really became the driving force in my life and still is today.
And it was a great book.
Yes.
I grew up with a single parent. She was a nurse, and she's the first Black nurse in her hometown. And very much so, like one day I would come home, even if she's worked a double shift, and she had the outlets pulled out literally of the wall, and she was figuring out how to change the electrical outlets in our house. So it just reminded me of such a beautiful book. And so important for young girls that I bought not only a copy for myself, but for our daughter, and we read and studied and talked about it together.
That moves me so much, I can hardly even tell you. And thank you for sharing that. And I think that so many of us, Kris, I know you come from such scrappy beginnings as well. And we learn these invaluable lessons about how to not let the fact that you may not know or understand something stop you from moving forward.
Marie, I wanted to ask you a question. It was many years ago when you were 23 years old, you had the courage to launch Marie TV when many women at that time were not creating that type of content. And that was courageous. That was audacious. That was wonderful, and obviously been now very successful. I'm sure there's been lots of ups and downs in that process. But how did you find your confidence and trust in yourself to go ahead and to create that vision, to create that platform, to create that voice?
I was born in 75, so it was kind of growing up in the 80s there. And my idea of a successful, powerful businesswoman had like huge shoulder pads, and she was in this corner glass office. That was kind of imagery that I think I just saw in the media. And I had this notion that one had to be perfectly educated and speak at a particular level and use particular language in order to be successful. And I remember being on Wall Street, on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, and trying to kind of step into my idealized image of what a successful young woman was. And I tried to do that in the magazine world, both on the advertising side and the editorial side, and kind of all these different beautiful opportunities that were career opportunities. But I kept feeling completely disconnected because I was trying to be something that I wasn't. And so after feeling like a failure and leaving jobs, even though I had a very strong work ethic and I was never afraid of hard work, I couldn't deny from a soul level that I wasn't where my soul wanted me to be. And the moment that I relaxed and said, you know what? I don't speak perfectly. I graduated from college. I was the first in my family to go to college, but I don't have higher degrees. I am way far from perfect. I'm quirky. I'm weird. I have a strange sense of humor. I like all of these different things. And I started just expressing the true essence of who I am. That's actually when things started to come together. So releasing this notion of perfection, releasing this notion of having to be someone that I genuinely wasn't, that was the only place it came from, that and just a lot of pain of failure of trying to be something I wasn't, and it did not work out.
Marie, you spoke about where from pain comes courage. And in the same way, Kris, we all know your story. The world knows your story. How, in your early 30s, you received what, talk about pain and courage, what would have been a devastating for most people diagnosis, rare and incurable stage 4 cancer. And instead of retreating from it, you built a movement around health and wellness. Take us back to that moment, and can you help us understand where you found that courage from when you decided to share your story and to build your movement?
I think my courage came out of fear, but also out of anger, if I'm to be totally honest, because when you're in your early 30s and or for a lot of people, young adults with cancer, when you're just starting out, you're trying to get your life together, you're trying to figure out who you're going to be and how you're going to make a living. And, maybe you've got dreams of starting a family or whatever that is. And then something like an incurable cancer diagnosis comes your way. It's so destabilizing. And so the initial thing was, I'm terrified. Am I going to live? Am I going to die? So I have this rare cancer that can be slow growing, but it can also be very aggressive. And so for me, it was first and foremost, find the best doctor, figure out what this thing is, and then come up with a game plan. And the first doctor suggested a triple organ transplant. And I thought that was crazy. I had never heard of anybody surviving something like that. And so I said, thank you, but no thank you. Again, much like Marie, I didn't have a higher degree. I actually wasn't even interested in health and wellness. I figured like fiber was for later. Right now, I got to get my shit together, make a living. And so this was not something that I thought was important or something that I wanted to spend a lot of time educating myself on. But then when you're up against the ropes, you find out real quickly what you do need to put your focus on. And for me, it was my health. And so I went about interviewing all of these different doctors. And I think it was my first experience of saying, okay, honestly, these people work for me. And I'm looking for my second in command. It was my first opportunity of being a CEO. And it was becoming the CEO of my health, which is what I often talk about. As I kept meeting more people and interviewing them, I decided, okay, Once I find my second in command, then I really have to look outside of the box. And when I finally did, he was like, look, this can be slow growing. It can be aggressive, all the things I just shared with you. Sometimes it can change. And so we're just going to watch and wait. And we're going to track you. And we're going to wait for cancer to make the first move. And we're going to get a baseline. And until then, you're going to watch and live. And I said, well, I don't really know what that means. And he said, go figure it out. And so it was through that fear and that frustration that I decided to carve another path. And for me, I think the anger was really about how come there isn't a lot of information out there for people like me, a young adult living with stage 4 cancer who doesn't have the kind of opportunities to like have chemo and radiation and surgery. And how come there aren't any books or media or resources for people like us who are living with these chronic diseases? And in a lot of ways, you know, especially back then and even before then, the big C was still something that you whispered about, you know? And so I think it was part of the reason why I came out with the film Crazy Sexy Cancer. Everybody said, do not call it that. And I was like, oh, I'm calling it that. And honestly, that's where it began. It came from my own pain, as Marie would say, and then it just turned into something else, especially when you take the thing that is so difficult for you, and then you can, Marie and I share this in common a lot, which is we use our creativity as tools for our healing. And I think that that's something that we both champion in each other is her creative power is something that I'm in awe of. It's something I always want her to continue to like put her foot on the gas and move towards because it's this unlimited supply of possibility and potential that I get really inspired by. And I think I have moments where I've offered the same experience for her. But ultimately, to, just get back to your question, I think Marie nailed it. It came from pain.
And I just want to take a moment because particularly if there are young women that are listening, but when what both of you all have just talked about, I think sometimes we want to gloss over fear, anger, pain, but leaning into those things, I say to our daughter all the time that, courage is not being afraid. It's doing it even when you are afraid. But if they can learn, young women at such a young age, that in those moments, something beautiful can be birthed.
Marie, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you brought Kris. I gotta say, I understand why immediately the friendship is so amazing. Marie, if I could ask a question, I was deeply moved hearing Kris speak a moment ago. I'm so curious, what has she taught you, not through her words though, but how she lives her life?
I feel like I learn from my best friend every day. And in terms of just witnessing how she shows up in the world for everyone else, I have never witnessed someone so committed to her family and her friends. Like when you are on Kris's inner circle, the things that she's taught me is just you stop at nothing to show up and dive full in when your people need you. And honestly, I've gone through the past probably a little over 2 years for me has been one of the hardest in my life. Both of my parents, their health declining. And I know this is something in, a journey that many of us go through in various ways. And for me, it's been the past few years. And I think watching Kris over the course of our friendship, how she showed up has really given me a lot of strength for how I wanted to show up for my own family in their time of need.
And in fact, even on your Instagram, there is something that I would like to share. You said that my mom almost died last year, twice. My dad's health nosedived at the same time. It was the most hellish, painful 6 months of my life. Can you talk a little bit more about those 6 months and what you learned in those moments of crisis?
Yes. So those 6 months extended to over 2 years. And essentially, and I'll say this, and I think it's important. What I'm about to say is it can be heard in a way that's like, wow, this is shocking. But I want to say this because I think many people experienced this in their lives and have trouble finding people to relate to. But my mom, after being devastated by COVID in 2023, she's a tiny woman. I've told the story about her already. She's extremely resilient. And within about 2 weeks of having COVID and no one knew it, she lost almost 30 pounds. So she looked like a skeleton. She was in the emergency room, and the doctors kept telling her there was nothing wrong with her. And if you would have seen her, you would have said, she's probably close to death. Like, what are you smoking? So as a person who wanted to dive in and say, we need to handle this, it was like at the same time that my mom was crumbling, my dad, we realized his memory wasn't just some memory issues, but going into dementia/Alzheimer's. So everything was crashing at once. Fast forward, because it was impossible for us to find anything that would help my mom, she actually tried to take her own life 3 times over the course of the past 2 years. And so, as you can imagine, very traumatic, very difficult, and navigating a quote-unquote healthcare system that's not really designed to get people well has been difficult, to say the least. I think the whole experience has shown me really how many challenges we have in this country. As someone who prides myself on being a boss in many ways, being hopefully a somewhat good communicator and have an ability to kind of navigate complex systems, it has made my heart break to think about so many others who have similar struggles, who don't have the experience or the ability to do some of the things that I've been able to do. The system is crushing. So I'll pause there in a moment, but I just wanted to say that for anyone who might be listening right now who is going through an experience with chronic illness, aging parents, my heart goes out to you. It will not last forever. I think one of the things I've learned is how important it is to give yourself breaks and take care of yourself. And I think we need to keep having these conversations because our population is aging. And we don't really have the infrastructure or the support to help people really exist in their last stages of life with dignity, with safety, with care, and then all of the caregivers, many of which were in our 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, who are struggling with growing a family and their children, and then also having to take care of your elders as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth and transformation there.
And how did Kris show up for you in those 6 months?
So can I tell you guys this? So we have a code in text, which is essentially an emoji, and it's an ambulance emoji. That emoji is not used all the time, but when one of us sends the other the ambulance emoji, it is essentially, I need you right now. And we never, quote unquote, cry wolf. But the way that Kris showed up for me is like when I sent those emojis, like, hey, this is happening right now. She dropped everything and just strategized with me. And she would often ask me, do you need me to listen? Do we need to brainstorm? Do you need me to get in my car? So it was kind of that level of knowing that I was probably in a really fragile state and that she opened the door for me to be able to ask for the kind of support I needed in a really traumatic moment.
It's really an honor that, and just myself and my brother Craig, we lost our father about a handful of weeks ago, about 9-10 weeks ago.
So sorry.
Thank you. We appreciate that. So we do have a good understanding of the dysfunction of the medical system that really separates the mind and the body. And just want to say how challenging that is. And so I want to say thank you for sharing that, and especially thank you for sharing with such detail and such rawness about the challenges your mom's gone through, especially the last little while, because aging is difficult, but aging parents without a medical system that really understands the wholeness of that process is equally difficult. Kris, I want to direct the same type of question for you to give listeners inspiration, advice, and courage. Let's take us back to the pandemic when your father was sick and was dying. Your business was struggling because of the pandemic, and you just celebrated, quote unquote, your 20th anniversary of having incurable cancer. Now, for anybody else, any one of those would have been a crisis, but this must have felt like an emotional tsunami. What pulled you through? What got you through that moment? What advice do you have for people that are going through very challenging times?
I I look back at that time and I know all the things that Marie has gone through in these past few years, and I feel like I was just a little ahead, meaning like the shit was hitting the fan in my life, and I had more perspective when it really hit the fan in her life. And so a lot of the mistakes that I made in my own life, I could try to avoid in hers. So even saying things like, "Do you want me to listen?" as opposed to just barreling in with advice. "You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this," was something that I learned through my own experience of grief. I did not want to touch grief. So, as somebody who has lived with stage 4 cancer for over 2 decades, you would think that grief would be an emotion that I am very familiar with because there's a lot of grief that comes from the loss of an identity, the loss of physical capabilities, the loss of, your health. And yet I had a blind spot because it felt so hot and so big to me that if I thought that if I even touched it, and what would happen is my whole life would fall apart because there was so much systemic and generational trauma in those places and in those hot spots. And so I kept avoiding it, and I think for me, that avoidance would come through working harder, creating more, helping others further, just hustle. And the more success I got, the easier it was to continue down that path. So it really wasn't until the pandemic and this constellation of loss came my way. My father was my chosen father, so I didn't meet my biological father until I was a teenager. And so he and I had a very, very close relationship. We still do. And I actually think Marie has a close relationship with him on the other side because she's always reminding me, Ken said this, and Ken would tell us to do that. And Ken would say that this thing that you're doing is like Naughty Town USA, cut it out. Right. So she has had she's been impacted by him as well. But it was really those moments when everything starts to fall apart that I think we have this opportunity to do the deep healing. And as a result of that, my book is called I'm Not a Morning Person, Mourning with a U. And it's because I didn't want to be a morning person. And yet it's those places that we avoid that often hold our freedom, as everybody here knows, and then some. And so I went on this pilgrimage and this journey that was really about having the courage to explore my grief and then kind of understanding that we can't amputate any of our emotions and expect to be whole. And I believe going back to that first question of, if joy is the path to a good life and, wholeness is the point, then we certainly can't amputate something like grief. And so when everything was going on and has continued to go on for both of us, I think just because I had had a little bit of that experience, certainly living it, but also then writing about it, because when you write about something, you have to put words to it in a different way, other than in how you would tell your therapist. And so in some ways, I felt very, very privileged to be Marie's best friend during this time because I felt like I had something to offer that the younger me would not have had to offer.
And Kris, just you can't amputate grief. So powerful, so important in terms of wholeness. I hope everybody again is listening. And for those who are parents out there, including all of us on this side of the table taking notes, I just want to say how important this is. But you were there and you showed up with Marie, of course, and that was really impactful. But what did Marie do to show up for you? And just give us some tangible things. And so if you have a best friend going through a crisis, going through a difficult time, I want everybody to be listening to this. Kris, how did Marie show up and give you that love and connection that you needed, especially at that time?
Well, Marie always keeps me connected to my source. And I think that's one of the greatest things that she does for me. She not only stands for me as a person, but she stands for the parts of me that I neglect. And there are plenty of them.
What do you mean by that? Can you explain that one word? That's really deep. Explain that a little bit more deeply, please.
So when you're going through a difficult time, especially she now that when, your parents are getting older and you're in this stage where maybe you're caring for young people and older people, there's a lot of pressure on you to be that caregiver. And there's a lot of very serious decisions that also have to be made during that time. So you need to be your sharpest. You need to be at full capacity. Well, how can you be at full capacity when you're absolutely exhausted and burnt out? And so, of course, you're not going to take the time in those moments, or you don't think to take the time to recuperate and to really take care of yourself because you're in fight or flight mode. Somebody's survival is dependent on you and how you show up. And so your best friend, if you're lucky you have a best friend like me who'll kick your ass, will be the person who will say like, hey, you're doing a great job, but you need this, or you need to take care of yourself, or you need to rest, or you need play. You need to come to the city. We need to have a good time. We need to see a scary movie. Do you need me to brainstorm? How can I help you? What doors can I open for you? So it's all of those things, right? And she is truly the person that I would go to when I have the best news on the planet. And she's the first person I'm going to go to when I have the worst news on the planet. Because she's gonna hold my hair when I'm barfing because I'm totally overwhelmed by what's going on. And then she's gonna give me a hug, and then she's gonna say, how can I help you put this back together again? And probably if she's gonna help you put something back together again, it's gonna come back together in a much better, stronger, and more loving way.
We feel each other very intuitively. And when I can feel in Kris that she's depleted, like I'm showing up with my full humor. I might drive to her. She lives a couple hours away. We love some of the same foods. I'm like, we're making this soup. We're watching our favorite show. We're doing X, Y, or Z. Or I'm making you come into the city and I'm cooking for you. And I'm going to take you shopping. Or I'm going to somehow fill your well in a way that's going to keep you aligned with that joy and yourself and the fact that everything's going to be okay. And you don't have to hold it together on your own. And I got you. And if you need to just melt and lose it and have it be messy, I will sit here and get in the mess with you, and you don't have to clean it up. I got that too.
We're building something real here, one episode at a time. If you want to be part of it, subscribe. It's free, it matters, and we're just getting started.
Now let's talk a little bit about romantic relationships, because obviously the two of you all are such a powerful system for each other, but you've also built strong, loving partnerships with two amazing men. Marie, I think it's been more than 2 decades with your partner, Josh.
Yes. Yes.
We're coming up almost on 30 years together. And like us, you were wise enough to have a partner with a little bit of seasoning on them. I think like there's a little bit of age, like the same with us, which is absolutely so wonderful and spicy. But what have you learned about what it really, really takes to grow together through the ups and downs of life with your romantic partner?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And by the way, this is something Kris and I, we talk about this all the time. But for me with Josh, so yeah, it's like 22 plus years. And he is just such a magical, incredible, creative, loving human being. And I can say this because we say this often, like the times like we have so much love and adoration and respect for one another. And there's such deep rapport and support and like soul level recognition. And then at so many times we're just like, I can't stand you. Like it's just like we drive each other absolutely batty.
Try working together too.
Yes. Oh gosh. I say this to Kris too. I'm like, if Joshy and I work together, so Josh is primarily an actor, writer, director. So he's in the entertainment field and I've got, my own online empire. If him and I work together, I would be in an orange jumpsuit because I would have murdered this poor man and be just away for it because that's the level that we can get to. I'm joking, obviously, but some of the things that we've learned, I will say, probably the most, I've done every retreat one could do, read every book one could read because I'm that person who loves to learn and tries to just be a better person. And Dr. Harville Hendricks and Helen LaKelly Hunt are the two, Imago
therapy. Yes.
Saved our butt, continues to save our butts.
Yes.
On the car rides where I'm like, really? Did you just say that? Or whatever.
Yep. Do you
I think
automatically go into the script?
we try,
Okay.
and then sometimes one of us slips out, and of course, like if it's Josh, I'm like, "You're not doing dialogue."
So Marie and Andrea, as a dutiful husband and Craig's dutiful husband, just give us like the 30 seconds of what you're talking about with the script and the therapy. We just take us a step back.
I noticed Martin's very
Martin's-
silent
Martin's
right
being
now.
very
but
silent.
We've done a mock. We
Yes.
do a mago. And
Yes, yes. So
You've
just
done.
Yes.
engage and fill us in.
It is, I think, one of the most potent and powerful ways of facilitating love and conversation, certainly with your romantic partners, kind of dialoguing and really hearing what your partner is saying and then not responding as much. So for me, a lot of it is so closely rooted in that the whole idea too of nonviolence and agape love, because you separate the actions or the words from the individual so that you can come back together whole.
Yes. And so anyone can Google, learn about it. They're still teaching, Harville and Helen, and I recommend everyone to, get a hold of their books, watch their videos. There's a new documentary that's out. It's fabulous stuff, whether it's romantic or otherwise. But I think Josh and I really, for me, I have to always come back to celebrating our differences.
Yeah.
Because we're very, very different people because each of us in their philosophical and kind of research clinical framework, we all have wounds that were formed very early on that sort of determine our lens on the world, and that in our romantic relationships are very often we're almost magnetically attracted to the exact opposite of who's going to push your buttons so that you can both heal together. And so for Josh and I, we find that, for example, one of my fears is being suffocated. So I love freedom. I love freedom. I love freedom. And Joshy's fear, his kind of core childhood wound, is being abandoned. So you could just see when one person doesn't want to be suffocated and one person doesn't want to be abandoned, you have like a salt and pepper shaker of the exact things that will drive each other bonkers. So I think for us, celebrating the differences, coming back to tools that actually work. I think also the courage to know I am not the same person that I was 22 plus years ago, and neither is he. And being able to courageously sit and talk and discover anew who this person is now.
Oh, I
Who
love
do
that.
they want to become? And can we continue to grow together without holding one another back and honoring our differences as we both evolve forward? And that's like an ever growing dance. We certainly don't always get it right. But what I'm proud of is that we keep coming back to the core of we love each other. We want to see each other happy. We're committed to each other's health and well-being. And we're committed to it being messy and to working it through when things aren't going well. And that's, that can be often in any human relationship where you have friction.
And Kris, I know that Brian has been with you throughout, from your diagnosis to your healing. What has he taught you about love and partnership?
Well, prior to Brian, I was always looking for the guy who would leave me, basically. So for me, my core wound is also abandonment. It's somebody who met her father later in life. My father left when I was conceived. And so I think I was always looking for that daddy figure. And I remember as a child thinking, well, if I am successful, maybe one day he'll hear about me and he'll want to meet me because I'll have value. Right. And so I also imagined what he might have been like. I saw him as like this big warrior and, he was a lot of bravado. I don't know where my little childhood mind came up with all this stuff, maybe like superhero type of stuff. And so I was always looking for that big warrior, bravado guy who had a lot of charisma and a lot of daddy troubles too. Right. And so it really wasn't until my diagnosis that as I was healing other aspects of my life and really kind of saying, well, okay, if you only have a certain amount of time left, if that's the case, how do you want to spend it? That I think I saw somebody like Brian. We knew each other and we had been in previous relationships and we had been in our friend circles, but I hadn't seen him as somebody who could be a partner with me. And so Brian is a filmmaker. He is an Emmy Award winning editor, film editor. And when I was making my film Crazy Sexy Cancer, one of our mutual friends was like, maybe Ryan can cut a little trailer for you, because they knew that I wanted to submit it to a little industry night to see if I could get representation. So he cut that trailer for me, and he started to teach me a whole lot about filmmaking, because I'd always been in front of the camera, but right before my diagnosis, I had moved to wanting to be behind the camera because I wanted to basically call the shots. And we were a little bit dating, but not really. It was really, for me, it was about the focus of the film. But as this 4 years went on, making the project together, he became the partner that I think, deserved, and didn't see, because I was so trapped in my own wounds. And so we ended up leaving our careers and working together. And I think that in and of itself becomes this practice for a relationship. As Marie has said, we have had many conversations where we've coached each other through hot relationship moments. And I'd say the biggest thing that I have learned from him specifically is, and Marie loves when I say this, so you will know exactly what I'm saying, Marie, is the only time you can change somebody is when they're in diapers.
Oh, that's one of the best lines.
That's good. Now, that's good.
Yes. Is that at the beginning of life and the end of life, or just the beginning of life? Just tell us.
Probably. It's the full spectrum. The whole thing.
Got it. Oh my
I
goodness.
love that. That's golden.
That is.
And I've had to learn. Like, okay, who is this person that I'm with that I can like champion and love for who he is? And then if you want to change somebody, it's because there's something in you that really is desiring to be healed. And so for me, it was like, okay, I got the focus on the wrong place. What are the wounds? What are the boo-boos? What are the hurt nooks and crannies of my being that need that care? And then I think, I'm still on this path, but the more work we put into that area, I guess our relationships benefit too, because we sort of like let the love flourish, as opposed to, try to control and suffocate it and make it look a certain way that it doesn't want to be in the first place.
That's amazing. And sometimes we say, particularly with the quote, you can only change someone in diapers. Now that'll preach. We'll preach that in a church.
And that comes directly from a preacher's kid, a PK. So there you go.
That'll preach. I can make a whole sermon around that. I want to ask both of you something about, particularly for our single listeners, because certainly dating can be frustrating and challenging. And, everybody has a checklist. What's one thing that you were looking for in your 20s, but now it's what you love most about your partner?
Before you answer this, did you ever think in your life that Martin Luther King would be asking you about your dating checklist?
No.
Was that on your bingo?
No.
Was that on your
not on the
vision
bingo card?
board? Yeah.
No, I cannot wait for dinner tonight. I'm going to be like, honey, let me tell you about my day.
So just as a little context, Jersey girl, Italian American, grew up on the Jersey Shore with really big hair, lots of tanning beds, Gold's Gym, muscles, Guidos. I can say that because I'm Italian American. So like probably on my list in my early 20s was like a really good tan and gold chains. And then as it got to like a more mature age, someone like Josh who is so willing to do the work. And when I say the work, I mean the work of loving themselves and another human being who is as flawed as I am, who is as wild as I am, who has as many different expressions as I am. So somebody who's willing to not just, assume that they know it all, but be willing to be curious and grow and learn. So yeah, from tans and kind of oiled up big muscles and gold chains to the inner.
I don't even know if I knew what I wanted. I was just sort of flailing all around, back then. But what I know now is that I really am so grateful to have a partner that I love talking to, that is endlessly curious, that can dive into any topic out there, even when we go out and we meet people and maybe he doesn't know anything about the thing that they do. He's endlessly fascinated by it and he wants to have those really wonderful conversations. And I think as my life has continued, it's just we're so lucky when we can have deep conversations with the people that we love.
And I do want to take us back to where we began, which is just the deep and unwavering friendship between the two of you all. Part of that, too, showing up and being there for each other, sometimes you have to kind of stand in some hard truth or one truth. And so I would like to ask each of you, what would be the one truth that you have said to each other that you all really needed to hear at that moment?
I can be very hard-headed, I will say that. And I sometimes I'm like, "I need to open everything as Figureoutable. Oh, wow, I wrote that? Boy, do I need a reminder." Here's what I wanna say, I will find the truths, but I just wanna like, with Kris, she's really the one person in the world, and I really think she is, the only person in the world who can say what may be to perhaps my ego, like a painful truth, and to not have me wanna, like, slap her. One person, because she will know how to kind of talk about intention to, like, kind of fill the space with love and say, "Hey," because I know she's standing for the essence of me, the soul of me, the highest of me, that I know she's speaking never to hurt me, but to help me rise up and to help me ease my suffering. One of the things that I always wrestle with, less so now than in my earlier years, but is really like this ultra competitive comparison kind of thing in my head that I'm not doing enough, that, oh, I should be doing more. It's kind of this addiction to productivity and achievement, and some of which can be really beautiful and that can drive us. And then for me, I've noticed it can go awry and it can be a monster that can feel just terrible inside. And any time that I've found myself in a space like that where I'm torturing me and I'm still, no matter how hard I'm working or how much I'm producing, it's still never enough. And let's say I'm comparing myself to a colleague or somebody out there, she'll be the one to be like, okay, well, this is what I know about you, Marie. You are such a powerful manifester. Do you really want that? Do you want X, Y, or Z? Because I know you could get it and we could write down, do you really want that life? And then when she does that to me, I'm just, no. Like, it's like it brings it all together. So she has this way of taming my inner demons and my monsters. And so the truth is really getting me back aligned with how powerful of a creator that I am. And the truth I usually need to hear is like, I'm doing exactly what I really want to do. It's this thing. And I'm pointing to my head for all of our listeners. It's my mind that can often take me off into these very torturous places.
So with me, I as much I will stand for people and stand for people in my family, especially in my inner circle, I can also disappear and vanish and hide and become my own little happy hermit cave dweller. And Marie always knows when it's gone too far, and she'll just pull me out of the cave, sometimes by my hair, but always lovingly. But also, there are those moments when I actually don't know how to use my voice. And they tend to be in similar situations. And literally, she will coach me and she'll give me the script to follow. And you think that when you are a grown up, you don't need help with things like scripts and how to talk to people. But I think oftentimes we actually do, especially when they're conversations that are difficult and maybe scary. And when I say scary, because they're tapping into something, an old wound or a place that still needs love and care in ourselves. And so she's my script doctor.
That's awesome. Script doctor. What a great conversation. Thank you guys. This has just been absolutely remarkable.
And just listening to the two of you, I got to say, I think this is one of my favorite episodes we've ever had because of just the vulnerability, the rawness, the holding each other accountable, the storytelling, and just clearly the love between the two of you. It's just such a beautiful model for friendship. Courage comes from pain. The places we avoid hold our freedom. We cannot amputate any emotions and expect to be whole. And of course, I think my personal favorite, only time we can change someone, in diapers. I think that one, my wife is going to quote to me a few times.
Yes.
The two of you have brought such a beautiful friendship to share with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.